All right, welcome back, everybody. Next, we've got another great presenter. I am pleased to be joined by Jeremy Whitt, who is the Senior Vice President for Media Strategy at BVK, which again, you guys are familiar with them. They are one of our agencies and we appreciate all that they do for us every day. Jeremy is gonna talk a little bit about the Cooperative Advertising Program. So I know we've got a bunch of new folks on here, but the Cooperative Advertising Program is our advertising assistance program. At the beginning of COVID, we were able to move money around and start offering an 80% match. So historically, we've done 50% because of COVID, because we know your budgets are stretched, we have increased that to 80%. So Jeremy will talk some about that. He's gonna give you some tangible suggestions for how your business can better utilize advertising dollars as we move forward through this pandemic. So Jeremy, thanks so much for joining, and it's all yours. And while he's getting his slides turned on, we will throw up a quick poll just to see how many of you have participated in the co-op program before. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Commissioner Ruby. Appreciate that. And I'm always honored to speak to the travel and tourism industry in this great state. Hopefully everyone can see my presentation now.
Looks good.
All right, fantastic. So I'll get right to it. You know, I don't need to tell everybody that your advertising budgets are lower as a result of revenues and forecasts. You know, as we look forward to recovery, the focus really must shift towards ROI, return on investment, and making sure we choose investments wisely and provide a way to prove that those choices are working. And the co-op program is a part of certainly what I'm going to talk about here. And a lot of this was leading up to how we developed that program. You know, the other challenge that we have, of course, is that when budgets are low and it's coupled with demand remaining low, the ROI of your spend is likely to remain lower than your historical levels. That is, of course, unless you change your approach to spending. But there is good news. You're not alone. Businesses large and small are both similarly challenged in finding ways to face these problems. None of them are in the position that they can afford to sit back and wait for conditions to improve. So, something that they're all doing is what I'm going to talk about. So a recovery takes some planning and forethought, and it certainly requires us to be smart with our money. I think the one thing that everyone has in common, whether you're an airline or a CVB, if you're a rafting company or a bed and breakfast, is how do I make sure I'm spending my limited advertising resources in the most effective way, which really requires smart inputs and a way to measure those results. And as I mentioned, even big businesses aren't advertising the way they once did. They've shifted to tactics that capture what's really available to them now, fishing where the fish are, I guess you could say, which means they've tapped into their data, but they've also begun focusing on channels that capitalize on those who are showing an interest in something that's really relevant to them. So really thinking about people who are raising their hands or tapping into people who have been their loyalists in the past. So it's really not right now about trying to outshout the other guy in these times from an advertising perspective. In many cases, it really is, again, about having to be smarter. So that's really what I'm going to talk about now. How can we maximize value by being smart about the way we advertise with reduced budgets? It requires us, to reach the most likely customers or visitors in the right places, at the right time in a way that we can validate. Because we know that people are really itching to get more active. We've had some starts and stops within this pandemic, and there are certainly a lot of people that remain cautious about their plans, but they're looking for an opportunity to get out and to get away. So as we look at the types of people there are groups of people who are really still open to travel. There are also people who want to get out within their own communities. But at the end of the day, that pool of customers or visitors is really smaller. So we have to be targeted. We have to reach those who are ready. And to do that, we need to use media channels that can identify those signals. But as you can see here on the screen, you've got all sorts of groups. Those who have just locked in and they're staying put. Some who have significantly reduced their movement but are getting a little bit back to normal. Maybe not traveling quite as much yet. There are people who have shown a lot of intent that they are open to a future or near staycation, or have recently done one. And then you have a big group of people who are these resilient travelers. They have not changed the way they behave what they can, at least what they can control, they behave, right? As airlines started to open up and the ability to travel became more, they've gotten back on the road and they've gone and done more things. So that is a big group of people that we understand is still there and ready to go. So to break this down, the first thing is understanding, really any shifts or current behaviors in what media your target market is really consuming. And a lot of that has really changed, from a consumption standpoint since the quarantines began. I think the biggest thing to note is that streaming services have really grown, and people have turned to those as a need for more content to fill their days as they were working from home or staying at home in the general sense. Many people turned in their cable subscriptions and rushed to social media while staying home as well. Everyone wanted to share more stories and be more social. So those platforms, streaming platforms, social media, really saw impressive growth. We're not sure what that's going to mean a year from now, and it's changing regularly, but the growth of streaming is something that is likely to remain a fixture in the future. So knowing that people are spending more time, not just online, but with digitally streamed content, it'll be important to understand how we can use that to our advantage. We can also get really smart about understanding how to target where those people live. So for example, with the state of West Virginia, we can look at data to understand where visitors have been and where they're coming from. So we subscribe to data at the state level that shows, it's called arrival list, but we subscribe to data that shows where our most likely prospects are coming from. And then we can prioritize spending in those areas as a way to grow now versus just focusing on growth opportunity markets, which is something that we would do in normal times. So this is just right here, a heat map, which is literally showing us device level data of where people who have visited the state have been coming from. Many of you have seen the results of this in the context of the recent fall and winter co-op programs, but part of this is this analysis then to determine which markets should get our focus. So along with focusing efforts on the markets with the greatest visitation, we also look to capitalize on momentum in places where we have had previous success advertising or had just generally been putting a lot of our advertising effort. So it's really maintaining some momentum where we've had it and focusing our dollars where we know that people are coming. We can also use some of the same data to determine when people are more likely to visit. So here, using that same data set, we're able to look at seasonal trends. And you can do the same. You can look at your own data to determine when you should be concentrating your efforts. In a general sense for the state, we can see this rise, in the fall and the fall off in the winter until it starts becoming up, starts coming up again spring through the summer. So from there, you look at your own data as well as the state's data if you have it, and determine when you should advertise to support those trends, when to start, when to stop. And then, of course, we can blend those two parts. We can work to understand how the markets differ by time of year. So again, looking at this map, this is literally where our visitors are coming from who have visited in the spring and summer versus those who have visited in the winter. And there is a higher concentration of in-state visitation in the winter than there is in the spring and summer. So those types of things are really important to understand, to know where you can put your effort based on the time of year you're in. And then what else do we know about our target? We can understand the demographics and the makeup of our most likely customers and really put the focus there. So what we did for the state, which is as well the foundation of our co-op program, was to focus on segments that have been validated by data and that have uniquely different needs from their experiences. And we can use these to help guide our messaging and media placement. So, the idea is for everyone, if you want to rely on what the data the state has, that's great. If you can dig into your own data to help understand any other types of information, demographics about your current customers or visitors, you should. And then figure out which groups to prioritize and focus your message there. So the game here is becoming less about being broad to everybody, but tightening up and finding out the people who are most likely to stay, what makes them tick, and focusing where we can. And on the screen here are the three segments that we have been using for the state to do that, which are our adventurous audience, our outdoor families, and our golden explorers. So as I mentioned, having that type of data allows us to target the media they're most likely to use while also using messaging that's really tailored to them. and data that really can help identify them more specifically. So this one-to-one approach, knowing that I have focused my reach on people who are most likely to come, and then I focus a message that's going to most appeal to them specifically, not a general sense, and then optimize my spend towards those groups. So really, what is this all leading to? What is the buildup for this? It's a media plan or a media activity or advertising activity that is really targetable based on your data and on someone's intent or propensity to visit. We also want to make sure that it's important to measure what we do. So find media that can provide a feedback loop through constant measurement, not just as the input standpoint, but also as the output standpoint. And finally, there's a lot of unknowns out there right now. We don't know if there is going to be another reemergence that's going to cause another more general shutdown. If people are going to shelter at home more than, or similar to they did in the spring. So you want media that can be easily changed, delayed, or canceled and rescheduled whenever you can. You don't want to lock yourself into something that you can't get out of, or it takes a lot of your time and energy to get out of it and wasn't worth it in the end. So, finding the opportunity to start and stop when you need to is really important as well. So flexibility in your media is really important. So what that leads us to, and again, a lot of this is what we saw in the co-op plan, are these types of channels to consider. You can pick from any of these options, but I think all of them have the opportunity to be used in a really simple way, and there are tools out there available for everyone to use those kind of on their own, as well as participating within the co-op program to get some of the advantages of that. So, for one, include paid search. If you're not doing it, start. If you are, learn what has the most positive ROI and tighten things up. So put more emphasis on key markets and time periods and keywords wherever you can. The second one would be paid social, and that really comes into a couple of different parts. Experiment with messaging against specific audience groups, which can also allow you to pay to engage with your existing community, but also provide continued value through your messaging to them. So, in particular, when you have followers of your business, they're going to remain loyal to you, but they don't want to just see advertising from you. They want to see content on a regular basis. So think about that, as well as then finding ways to push promotions to them when you have something specific you want to talk to, you want a particular action from them, then you can use advertising to help support that as well. Display advertising is another one that's really achievable for most businesses to do on their own. And here you can leverage intenders based on the content they're consuming. So that can be directly with websites. If you want to go to TripAdvisor and those types of platforms directly, you can certainly do that. You can also go to things like Google's display network and use keyword data or other behavioral data they have, which allows you to do that over display advertising, native advertising, video with extensions into YouTube, if that's something that you have from an asset perspective. And then retargeting is another one here, right? And this applies to display, it applies to paid social. It's really the idea of targeting those who have visited your site with a more action-driving message. So, there are tools you can use through Google Ads, through Facebook, Instagram, or through specific vendors that not only let you target the people that have been visiting your site, but then to figure out what messaging they should get next, right? And then optimizing towards those who are converting and becoming either customers, making a reservation or a booking, downloading some sort of content that you want. And then, of course, is measurement. So this is really big, right? Make sure to create benchmarks and targets to ensure you're meeting goals, and also signal when you should pull back or increase spending. It's really important to set those up. Historical is okay to grab from, knowing though that the baseline has changed, but it does allow you to say, hey, I'm not willing to pay more than this amount for this type of action, or I'm willing to pay this range to have somebody sign up or become a conversion. So it allows you to do that and then track your progress against those things. So, a lot of these platforms allow you the opportunity to pay really close attention to the various metrics that are available to you. So, for example, which ads are working best, which keywords might be doing a much better job than other keywords. We talked about geography, but it also can allow you to see, which people are converting the best. So, you have the ability to determine your input, again, based on the data that you have, but then also when you are running a campaign, you get a regular feedback loop to either confirm that or enhance those inputs that you've already had in place. And then, of course, test messaging to see what's driving a better engagement. If you have the ability to put out a promotion or a discount, test that threshold and see. And you can even test that between audiences. Test one audience with one message and another audience with another, and see if you get a certain amount of lift between those two messages. So that's really the setup of how we think about that, how we can look at various different types of audiences and data points, historical information, and how we can measure it across certain channels to see where we should be prioritizing our spend when we know budgets are lower. So last, I want to bring this all back, as Chelsea mentioned, to the co-op program, and the state program. And again, this is something that many of you have seen already. So one of the benefits of the current WVTO co-op program is that it's built with all of that in mind. It has been designed to focus on individual audience segments with options that are available to serve whatever your goal is, to understand your markets and best fit the type of business you are. So when we deliver the co-op strategy at the very beginning of each season, this is what we set up. Think about who your audience is, determine what your priorities are from a goals perspective, and it maybe crosses over on some of these things, but we really try to get everyone to kind of focus in on what they want this to accomplish. Best understand where your own audience is coming from, and if you don't know that, you can use some of the generalities that we've created for the state, and then really having tactics that are best served for whatever business type that you are. So the program that we have for the state, while it does focus on intenders, it is also designed to reach the most qualified people at various stages of readiness. So, as we look at this, which is a traditional marketing funnel, most of what I was talking about as a setup is reaching people who are in that mindset of wanting to, they're doing some research, but more likely we're trying to get them to plan and book. They're raising their hand, they're an intender. What's important is that we also have the opportunity to find those people and reach them maybe when they're not in the website that shows that they are right now at this very moment showing intent, but it capitalizes on the behavior. So we know we can reach them in another way with the understanding that they are the right type of an audience for us. So that could be things like connected TV or other types of digital video. So that's the, kind of the conclusion of all of this. We have opportunities with like objectives that we can combine to create this custom packages, but there is buying power and access to some expanded channels through the co-op program that you might not be able to get on your own, which all leverages, again, that same kind of data. So, I mentioned connected TV. If you look at your goal of delivering an impactful message, certainly things like social video you might be able to go and do on your own, but getting access to the ability to run on people's TVs through their Rokus or their Apple TVs or through Hulu, that's an opportunity here through the co-op program, as well as programmatic out of home, for example, which is a way that we can buy digital billboards or buy other types of out of home more on demand. So we're not, again, committing to something long-term that we can't easily cancel. So, streaming video along with connected TV, streaming audio, and programmatic display are all types of channels that through the co-op program and through the leverage that we have through that co-op program, we can certainly do to deliver upon those results. And that's really what I have. I want to thank everybody really for your time. I sincerely hope you found this useful and that I've gotten your wheels turning a little bit on a few ways to try and fine tune your advertising as you move forward through this winter season and into the next spring and summer.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Always appreciate your insight. It is so hard to navigate all of this data right now. Even here at the state level, we've been looking at this daily, weekly, monthly, all these different updates. And it's not easy to navigate that. So we really appreciate you giving that insight. I just want to ask you, in all, you have a lot of experience in this. You've reviewed a ton of data. What is the biggest change you've seen in media habits since COVID? I know there's a lot of them, but what would you say is the biggest?
Yeah, I would say it is certainly streaming services, the increase in amount of time spent there. So we have seen a lot more people dropping their cable subscriptions and picking up, whether it's YouTube TV or it's Hulu Live or it's Sling, subscribing to those types of services, which I think makes a lot of sense. People have increased their bandwidth at home, like literally, like have upped their internet service to take that on as they're doing more working from home. So that's been a natural kind of progression. And what we like from a marketing standpoint is now that with more people shifting to that, it does give us the opportunity for more one-to-one communications because we can target streaming households in a way much differently than we can cable households.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I know in my house, we've watched a lot more streaming since this all began. We were out watching Apple TV just last night. So yep. What is your one piece of advice? Like if you could boil this down to one thing to tell people that they should change about their media strategy right now, what would it be?
I think it is, really first understanding what you've been getting out of your media so far. And then, find those places where you have seen some elements of success, whether that is through your paid search or your paid social efforts, and figure out what it is about those things that I can continue to optimize and find ways to continue to tweak and learn from. So, if it was me and I had my own business I was trying to recover with right now, I would make sure I was getting the very most I could out of things like paid search and paid social, because again, those are things that platforms that have a ton of engagement right now, a lot of specificity in terms of the type of person who's looking for a particular thing. And just in general, in particular with social, that ability to kind of weave your way into somebody's kind of everyday life without it seeming as much like an advertisement.
Yep, that is very helpful. So those of you at home, on our poll, like 26% of you want to learn more about co-op or haven't participated in the future. So if you're one of those people and you want to know more about this program, please contact our office, send us an email, call. And we would love to talk to you about this program. Like I said in the beginning, we've increased the match from 50% to 80%. It also includes creative costs. So it's a really great program, especially right now, while so many of you have reduced media budget. So Jeremy, thank you again for presenting. Also, huge thanks to the number of times you have helped us plan, replan, and replan again our media budget since March. We really appreciate you and your team.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, so we've got just a few minutes. We will start back here with our next presenter in about 7 minutes at 11:40. So you guys have a few minutes to stretch your legs, get some coffee, and we'll see you back shortly.